Hi guys, so today we're going to practice the threshold and sort of see what this effect can do and how it can be kind of worked with other tools that we've learned how to use. So first we're going to go through some just basic thresholds. So if you want to pause the video and just sort of like arrange your pictures to fit this, I have grabbed a picture from the internet that I found. Now, I found this on a website. I didn't go to Google. I didn't go to Google image search to find this. Well, obviously you could have found it. I get in Google image, but I didn't use Google image search to find my image because you want to be careful whenever you're doing any kind of like graphic design stuff, because you never know who owns the picture. Just because you find it online doesn't mean that someone didn't take it, right? Someone took the picture. There was a let's see, Shepherd Ferry Hope. So this guy right here, Shepherd Ferry, he found a picture in the newspaper and decided to use just a picture he found in the newspaper to sort of screen print this poster here, which made him incredibly famous. He was a kind of an obscure sort of street artist before that, but he didn't get permission to use the picture. In fact, when they found that he was that he had used this picture, the people who actually own the picture, which was the Associated Press, they actually sued him, saying that he owed him money. They owed money for the use of their picture, and he actually, went so far as to sort of destroy some evidence that he ended up getting in some trouble for that. But the idea, once again, is that you never know who owns it, and you want to make sure you're always careful as to where you get your stuff. So I always go to this website called Pixabay. Pixabay is a free image site. Essentially, what it is a stock image library, which gives you a variety of things like vectors. Oh, there's the guy right there. Vectors and high-res photographs, illustrations and things like that, portraits and landscapes and all manner of things that you can think of, and it guarantees you that if you use this in your in your design, that no one's going to come after you and say, "Hey, you stole that from me," right? That's my picture, right? So they put it on here with the express knowledge that it's going to be used in various things, without any guarantee of recompense. So you have the option of paying the money. So whenever you find a photo, always choose a website like Pixabay, Unsplash, which is basically the same thing, has a series of images that you can use for a variety of things. Another good one is Pexels. It's sort of the free alternative to a website like Shutterstock or even Adobe Stock, which has a variety of images that you can choose from. So these images here are, once again, they're totally free to use. You don't have to credit anybody. You don't have to do anything like that. It's basically just free to use with your design. Obviously, you can't claim it that you made it yourself. That's a plagiarism. That's essentially stealing someone's intellectual property. So rant over as far as that goes. If you want to use a picture that you made yourself, make sure it's a picture of either someone's face or maybe something that's like somewhat clear. This animal has a face here, so it's important that we kind of have something that we can kind of recognize here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to run through a few sort of basic kind of rules when it comes to using the threshold. So like we said before, the threshold essentially will take the dark and light areas of your picture, and it will either determine whether or not they're going to be black or white, and you can determine which shades, like which level of darkness becomes black and which level of darkness becomes white by virtue of a threshold. A threshold is just simply a cutoff point. Think of like the threshold of your door. That's like the point where it's like either outside the door or inside the door. It's like the sort of cutoff point. So I have this sort of, once again, I have my little select tool here. I've got it set to auto select, and also show transform controls is checked as well, so I can know what I'm clicking on here. And I'm going to click on this one. So I have this right here. I have original written here, so I'm just leave that blank. So whatever photo you choose, go ahead and put this down here. Let's I would go ahead and choose something other than what I've got here. Let's not choose the sheep, just so we're not hung up on trying to duplicate to the nth degree exactly what I'm doing here, because there's all manner of things that might happen. Okay, anyways, so the first thing I'm going to say is threshold 50. What does that mean? Okay, let's go here to image, adjustments, threshold, and let's set it the threshold level to 50, right? That's, I want to say the highest is 255, so 50 is, I would say, sort of, kind of like a eighth of the way there. 50, right? There, okay. Okay, so, let's take a look at this. One thing to note, we've got, I would say, a clear view of like the ear, of the eye. There's a bit of the nostril here, a little bit of the whiskers of this sort of sheep's muzzle. Sort of a background kind of sheep is visible there, but not a whole lot else. Right? So that's threshold 50. So depending on what kind of contrast your image naturally has, in this case, it's sort of a dark photo with some dark areas and nice shadows and stuff. Depending on the darkness and the sort of differences between the lights and the dark areas, in this case, the sheep itself is sort of lightly colored and the walls are lightly colored as well, will also kind of determine what you can see as far as your image goes. Okay, so that's the threshold 50. Let's go down here. I'm going to click on this guy right here, and I'm going to change the threshold level to 100. Let's go to Image, Adjustments, Threshold. I lost it. Here we go. And we'll change it to threshold 100. So you can kind of see the difference here as far as the two levels of detail here. So in this case, we're getting a little more of, like, say, for instance, this ear is showing up a little bit better. And by virtue of, like, the sort of Gestalt rules of, like, completion, of closure, we can kind of complete this image here. We can kind of see where the animal's muzzle ends up. And we can kind of see where the animal's back ends up just by virtue of, like, kind of a way there. We're losing a little bit of the sheep in the background. That's kind of becoming less easy to see. But we're getting more of, like, this little shadow on the lamb's chest and the sheep's chest there. So that's something else, right? So 100 is about right. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here to this one, threshold 150, adjustments, and I'm going to say, once again, threshold, and I'll choose 150, and we can kind of see that we're getting some good detail, especially along like the snout and stuff. We're getting a lot of good shadows there, just to let us know the shape of the snout. But we're losing a good deal of detail on the side here, where the sheep is in shadow. So I chose these numbers kind of at random, 50, 100, 150. Obviously, you could just choose like 255, but of course that would probably turn everything black. 0 would turn everything white. So my thoughts are these. This picture, to my mind, works best within these three numbers here, 50, 100, 150, with threshold 100. Your picture might work better with a different level. So whatever level you think between these three works best and gives you the clearest sort of picture as to what it is you're looking at, go ahead and choose that level right there to go for the rest of this. So I'm going to choose threshold 100. In fact, if you want, you can sort of like mark it off with a little asterisk here, just to let everyone know what it is that you're looking at. Okay, so with this done, we're going to adjust. We're going to do some other things. We're going to make some adjustments with the to go along with our threshold and see if we can't maybe improve upon the detail of this, and we'll see kind of what limitations we've got and what we don't have. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and desaturate this. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Saturation, and I'm going to pull the saturation all the way down just to get a good idea as far as what areas are light and which areas are dark. Now this gives us a better idea here. So I'm not going to do this for the rest of it. I just want to show this to you guys. So by virtue of turning everything black and white, I can kind of see, okay, I'm starting to notice a little bit better like what it considers to be darker and what it considers to be a lot lighter. I can kind of see a little bit better as to what's going to turn what color. So when I go over here to Adjustments and find my contrast, brightness and contrast, and I pull my contrast all the way up, you can kind of see that some of the darker areas are turning a bit darker and some of the lighter areas are turning a bit lighter, right? So as far as, mostly it's sort of affecting the differences between the light and the dark areas. Some of those areas are starting to stand out a bit better. And by virtue of that, when I go to my adjustments and my threshold, let's see if anything changes. Once again, I'm going to choose threshold 100. So whichever one you decide to choose, let's see if there is a distinct difference between these two. Well, I'm seeing a few things here and there. There's a little more noise along the neck. There's a little more detail on the back here. This little barn thing is sort of showing up better. There's a little more detail on the muzzle. But all in all, it's not really all that great. It's not really all that much different from before. The idea, once again, is that you've got this picture here. The picture itself kind of has its composition, and based upon that composition, you're going to get yourself your threshold one way or the other. So I would say contrast plus threshold has a limited use. It can give you a little more detail, but depending on what the photo is, it might not afford you a whole lot. So I'll just keep going on here. Anyways, so let's look at what happens when we put the curves together with our threshold. So I'm going to go over here to my curves. I'm going to go image, adjustment, curves, and I'm going to yank my shadows up a little bit. Nope, down a little bit. I'll yank my shadows down. In fact, I'm going to pull this all the way out here. Yank my shadows down. I'm going to make the highlights way, way up, like so. Oops, try it again. Okay, so we're going to get it sort of blown out. So we're going to have some really dark areas and some really light areas. I'll press OK, and we'll see what happens here once I apply my threshold here to, once again, 100. We want to make sure we keep that a constant. All right, so I'm getting even more detail, I think. It's not a whole lot different. You can see it mostly with like the little shape here. You can see it kind of along the ear. There's a little more detail here. There's a little something kind of going on once again with the muzzle, like with the little areas of the nose that's sort of spreading out some. Again, I'm losing some detail here or there. I want to figure out what it is I want to keep. So I think what I'm mostly losing are the legs, the back legs, and the eye. I'm going to choose this. This is my my drawing, my photo creation, my little picture here. So with this particular photo, I'm going to just determine what it is that I want to keep. Now with your photo, I need you to think about this for a second. Your photo is going to be a little bit different. Your photo is going to have different things that you're going to want to keep. For instance, if you have an area that's like, for instance, turning too white, maybe you want it to turn a little darker, in which case you're going to choose, you're going to use not the dodge tool, but the burn tool. In fact, we'll actually do a little bit of that. But first I'm going to use my, my dodge tool here just to lighten some areas to see if I can't get those to be on the other side of the threshold. So that's going to involve some destructive changes. So when I click on my dodge tool here, my little dodge tool, it's a little lollipop, press O on the keyboard. If you hold it down, if you see the little burn tool, if you see the little hand kind of grabbing nothing, I guess, just, you know, hold that down, click on the dodge tool, there you go, you got it. And you notice once you have this layer here selected, you press O on the keyboard, you try clicking it, it says, oh, this has to be rasterized. Now recall, once you rasterize this, it becomes just a row of pixels that can't be resized unless you affect its resolution. So you want to make sure that your size is all set up and everything's the right size before you do this. So I'm going to press OK, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to really kind of lay on this dodge tool here. I'm going to make this a bit bigger. I'm going to make sure that my dodge tool, the brush up here, is set to have very little hardness. I don't want this to be a really kind of harsh cutoff here. Oops, I got the wrong tool. I got the burn tool. No, I get the brush tool. So once again, yeah, dodge tool, very low. Right there you go. So let's see if I can undo the little brush tool. Can I do this? Nope. Okay, very cool. All right, so once again, I'm going to pull this out, and as you can see, the area around the ear, the eye is kind of getting lighter. The eye itself is not getting a whole lot lighter because it's a pretty dark color. I might do a little bit more inside the ear too. I want a little more detail inside this ear. And let me just see what we got over this way as far as the normal one goes. I like that. That's fine. Okay, so I want to keep this front leg and this back leg, but I don't want to lose so much of the front leg that I lose kind of where it's at. So once again, I'm going to hit O on the keyboard. I want to see if I can to kind of pull this down some and maybe get a little more of this leg available. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with the back leg here. I'm going to pull this down some. So I'm using a touchpad, so it's a little bit different motion, a little different like thought behind the motions here. So obviously this is like not creating a good looking image. I might also want a little more detail on the nostrils too. So I'm going to just sort of pull in here and get this muzzle a little bit brighter, just to kind of maybe I'm hoping I can get this to have a bit of a difference along the little cheek here. Little We'll see what transpires. Okay, so let me think. Is there anything that's turning white that I don't want to turn white? Maybe along the back of the sheep. Maybe I want this to turn. So maybe I'll choose my burn tool here. Maybe I want a little bit more information on the back. Maybe I'll just sort of I'll try to darken this area here along the. So I'm going to actually make this a good deal smaller because I have a smaller area. Again, this is kind of up to you to kind of determine what you want. I'm going to see if I can't pull this area a little bit darker, and maybe this will form a bit more of like a border between the wall and the sheep, and I can get a little more kind of a little more detail as far as where the sheep's body is. Okay, so this is, I've kind of made a bit of a mess of this image here. So now, hopefully, when I go to Image, Adjustments, and Threshold, let's see what happens. Go to 100. Okay, there's a couple things that I like about this. I like seeing the eye, I like seeing the leg, I like this little area of the back here. I'm not sure I like the nose quite so much. I don't think the nose was really all that much improved, but you can still see a distinct difference between these two, the Threshold 100 and the dodge of the threshold. I think I'm going to go a little overboard with the dodge tool. So obviously, you are welcome to kind of experiment with that before you get on into it. I can easily undo what I just did. Problem once again with making these destructive changes is that there's only so much you can undo, especially when you're doing stuff with like brush strokes and you're clicking a whole lot of times. There's very limited in how far you can undo. Anyways, let's finish this up by going to our levels. Remember, our levels were basically like our exposure, except for that gave us a sort of a method. Gave us a method of adjusting both the shadows and the highlights. So I'm going to pull them together here and see if I can't get the highlights and the shadows as close as I can. And this is going to look a lot like it looked on the curves. Okay, I'll put my black a little less. No? Okay, it's fine. Why a little less? No, that's fine. Okay, we'll just leave it like that. All right, I'll press OK. And I'm going to go ahead and once again, Image, Adjustments, Threshold level 100. Okay, let's see what the difference here is. There's a little bit more detail along the face, but I'm losing a lot of detail on the body. So I'm not sure if that was the best sort of addition there. Again, for this specific picture, I think what I could do, if I wanted to create this little sort of threshold sort of stamp out, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys, by itself, it might look like the threshold doesn't have a whole lot of uses, but it's going to come in very handy later on when we start doing our composites and some of our more inventive photo creations. Knowing how to use this threshold is very, very vital. So, well, I'll tell you what, we'll just leave it there. So Control-0, put this back out. Once again, we want to make sure we have a good margin on the sides and on the top and on the bottom, just to keep all those together. If there's something on the right here, maybe what we can do is just sort of like pull this out here. And we can even so maybe we can find a way of maneuvering this to be around the same. I'm gonna image and crop. So now we've got this sort of kind of back to a little narrow there. So threshold practice with your name. Make sure everything's well spaced. Make sure everything's there, and do make sure that there is that these are clearly labeled with the right sort of address there. Once again, we go to File. Save to save it as a PSD file, save as, and from the drop down menu choose JPEG to save it as a JPEG, and put your name next to it, threshold, practice with your name, and press save. Always choose level 12 for your maximum level of quality, and turn this in as a JPEG to D2L. All right, very cool. Well, I can't wait to see what you chose as your picture, and I can't wait to see what you guys produce. All right, see you in class.